Welcome to the sixth episode of the Find and Seek podcast. I'm Victor, and I'm so glad you tuned in. You know, there are only really two ways in life, two paths we can take, and we're going to be looking at those. I'll be delivering the message in sermon form, so let's watch.
You may be seated. You know, we've quoted this verse a lot recently, and we can do it again. Jesus told us the way we are to treat others is simply to treat them the way we'd like to be treated. He said, here's a simple rule of thumb, guide for behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, and then grab the initiative and do it for them. I'm going to say that again. Then grab the initiative and do it for them. That's going to be your cue. Every time I say, ask yourself what you want people to do for you, we say, then grab the initiative and do it for them. It's going to come up. And I hope that we can be saying that throughout this week. We're in the grocery store. I wouldn't mind if someone said, you look really cute. I wouldn't mind that. If anybody would say, I look pretty fine, I'll take it. Maybe we can be doing that. Grab the initiative and give that to the checker. You look really cute. Your hair looks good. Handsome fella, saying the things that we would like, grab the initiative and do it for them. So how do we do this? Well, we want to be respected. I like being respected. You know, there's a lot of times I say things that I haven't really fact-checked. A lot of times I act in ways that might be a little bit too angry or too cowardly. I would like to be given the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's having a bad day. So I got to give that to people. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Someone cuts me off in traffic, or worse, says a bad word or a bad sign to me. I can be mad back, or I can say, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just found out their wife got cancer and they just can't handle my driving, which probably isn't that great. And I can wave at them and say a prayer about them instead of getting angry back. I want to be loved. I like that. I like being appreciated. I gotta love. I have to appreciate. Those things that we would like, we're following all of God's law. Jesus said that's God's law and prophets. Add them all up, this is what you get. I don't like it when people take my stuff. I can't take other people's stuff. I don't like it when people say negative things about me behind my back. That means I can never, ever say a negative thing about someone behind their back because I wouldn't like it. So I know good and well that that's not following God's law and prophets. I don't like people to insult me, whether behind my back or to my face. Maybe my opinion isn't that well researched. Maybe I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Gee, of course I'm not. I don't like being insulted for that. So when you say something that I know to be wrong, I can't insult you. I have to listen to you with compassion. Follow the Jesus way. Those who do not follow this golden rule, I'm going to tell you this. You're not going to like it. I don't like it. I hate it. Are by definition, believe it or not, actually Satan worshipers. According to the Church of Satan's website, yes, I got on the Church of Satan's website from my church computer, to see what it says. What is Satan worship according to them? Our position, it says, is to be self-centered, with ourselves being the most important person, and they put in parentheses, the God of our subjective universe. It's not worship of a being out there. Satan worship is selfishness. By that definition, a lot more people are proud members of the satanic church. I've met them in lots of Christian churches, lots of pastors, board members, deacons, businesswomen, housewives, you name it. A lot more people are worshipers of Satan, members of the church of Satan, which is the religion of self. And it can creep into all of us. We can all be that guy, that gal who thinks more about ourselves than we do about others. Because all we have to do to follow all the law, the whole Bible, all the prophets, everything Jesus says. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, and grab the initiative and, yeah, that's it. You got it. And do it for them. The biblical account of Satan is one who is selfish, self-centered, someone who thinks about himself or herself. I don't know whether Satan's man or woman. I don't think it works for spiritual beings. Talks about themselves, goes to therapists who will listen to them talk about themselves. Someone who obsesses about themselves. Someone who votes for political leaders who will give them the most stuff. Satan worshipers. Make social media posts about their lives, their thoughts, their completely unresearched opinions, but want to get clicks. Not to help others, but to get sympathy, get attention. Someone who thinks their point of view is always right. Even though there's other very intelligent people, some with PhDs and lots of experience, who think differently than them. They got to be wrong. We got to demonize them, tell them they are evil. That's a Satan worshiper. Someone who thinks their point of view is always right, even if they've never done significant research in the forming of their opinions and simply accepted what doctors, politicians, and good-looking actors told them to think. That's the definition of a Satan worshiper, a worshiper of themselves, their own ideas, their own self. Let's read what Isaiah says about the first Satan, of which we have all joined ranks at some point in our life. And Jesus' golden rule is the way out of that self-worship. Isaiah 14:12 says, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn." I think it's interesting that God, through Isaiah, doesn't even say too wicked of things about Satan. I mean, I've never had anybody give me that kind of compliments. Morning star, son of the dawn. God still sees the value in Satan, the beauty, the glowing, shining potential. He goes on, "You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." We all do that when we put ourselves before others. And it says, "But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit." Now, this is very poetic language, but it all comes down to being self-centered. That's the sin of Satan. He's not doing that. He's just saying, I'm worth it. I'm more important. Me, me, me. That's all he's doing. There's a lot more Satan worship going on than we like to think. And I personally have not noticed enough of a difference in the many churches in 35 years of being in ministry. I've not noticed enough of a difference between biblically defined Satan worship among Christians and non-Christian people. And I'm sad to say that. My own pastor, I had a pastor sleep with a secretary and destroy his marriage. I had another pastor run off with $40,000. The pastor who meant the most to me, helped develop my spiritual walk as a teenager. When I was in college, my parents had to tell me he did that. And I think the reason why we haven't seen enough of a difference is because Christians and churches have selected some forms of selfishness and call those immoral, evil, wicked. Those are the bad ones. And other forms of selfishness, the ones we like to do, incidentally, call those soft sins, excusable wrongs. And sometimes have even borrowed language from psychology or philosophy and redefined the selfishnesses we had, the ones we want to continue, and give those positive names. But they still drag us, like they did to the original Satan, to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit of hell, because that's the way of selfishness, the way of Satan worship. The two basic ways that Jesus and Moses and all the prophets try to get people to see is that all of our attitudes, beliefs, all of our behaviors, everything fall into one of two camps. There's just two ways, two camps, selfishness or selflessness. Selfishness makes us a follower of Satan, the epitome of selfishness, and selflessness makes us a follower of Jesus, the epitome of selflessness. In the verse in Isaiah, we see a description of the way of Satan and of every follower of the way of selfishness. Any soul who puts themselves first, or any time I do put myself first, when I'm silent, when I should speak, or any time when I look down on my sister or brother who are so beautiful that they are made in the image of God. If I look at you and don't see your beauty, your majesty, as if you are one created in the very image of God, if I don't see you that way, the only way I can not see you that way, even if you're very different than me, come from a completely different culture, even if you're hurting me, cursing me, if I don't see that in you, I'm putting myself, my own desires before you. I'm following the way of Satan. And it will end up bringing me eventually to the pit of hell, to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit, both in this life and in the next life. Dr. Susan Noonan, wonderful doctor, after prescribing antidepressant drugs to people for years and years, after recommending all of the therapeutic processes, methodologies that she was supposed to recommend, distinguished doctor, she ended up finding herself more and more through time in her 30s and her 40s, plunging more and more into a pit of depression, and only then discovering that when she was prescribed the same drugs she had been prescribing and went to the same exact therapist, the same therapies she'd been recommending for decades, she kept slipping deeper and deeper into the same realm of the dead that her depression was taking her, until she discovered the amazing revelation that none of it worked, as data clearly shows about everyone else who tries those methods. I've read so much data about this that I wonder why anybody ever does what their doctors recommend when it comes to mental health. Modern therapists, by their own recommendations, have a 10 to 30% rate of cure. They've done studies where random strangers pretend to be a therapist. They generally have twice that. If you go to someone who pretends they're a therapist, there have been double-blind randomized studies, and they sit there and listen, you have a 40 to 60% chance of getting help. Placebo therapists, regular people pretending, have at least as high, and in some studies, twice as high of cures as actual therapists, with the true indicative factor causing the healing simply being how compassionate that person is. A compassionate person brings healing to others, regardless of their schooling or background. Psychiatric medicines, in other words, the drugs, fare even worse, with top journals like The Lancet recently publishing articles entitled things like Drug Development in Psychiatry, 50 Years of Failure. So Dr. Noonan discovered modern medicine, therapy, psychiatry was useless to pull her out of her pit of despair. And she writes, she unknowingly ended up discovering the Jesus way by volunteering. She wrote how she could barely take care of herself, barely get off the couch, couldn't think straight, had no confidence, hated herself more and more, kept slipping deeper and deeper into the pit of depression. This is exactly what Isaiah says happened to Satan. Slipped into the depth of despair. That's what happens when we put ourselves first as our little gods. Every time I do something selfish, I'm taking a step that way. So, Susan, Dr. Noonan, tried volunteering in the cancer resource room of a large hospital for 4 hours a week, and it changed her life. Those 4 hours turned into more and more. She sat with people who needed a friend to hold her hand as they were getting infused, to be there to hug them and cry with them as they went through their suffering, the death, the loss of their loved ones. And she later wrote, I will be eternally grateful for the patients I saw who did not realize that they supported me as I was helping them and provided me with this opportunity that very, very clearly changed my life When she tried to serve them, support them, listen to them, love them, give them compassion, she ended up saving herself, unknowingly following the Jesus way, which lifts us out of the depths of the pit of depression. The Jesus way is the way. It's the way that all the law and prophets wrap up in the Jesus way. We love, honor, and respect ourselves the most, not by standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm good enough and smart enough and God darn it, people like me. And reading self-help books and telling myself, I'm beautiful, I'm special, I'm wonderful. That doesn't work. I love, honor, and respect myself the most when I offer love, honor, and respect to others. The Jesus way just works. The Satan way doesn't. And I hope our society, or at least those some of us, can begin to model that Jesus way. Let's turn from depression, take another pit that many people struggle with, and it's OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. Psychology Today contributor Leon Garber, writes that obsessive compulsive disorder is marked by extreme self-doubt. Freedom from that form of anxiety, or any form of anxiety, is to stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about other people. To give to other people what we would like to have for ourselves. This is Psychology Today that is paraphrasing the golden rule, the Jesus way. Thinking about ourselves, the Bible says, is the Satan way that leads us to the pit. But you say, Victor, you don't know how shy I am. I feel convicted to speak up sometimes. But I'm the youngest in my family. They never listen to me anyways. You don't know how debilitating my anxiety is. I would be doing tics and going crazy if I tried to speak up. Well, so you do. So sweat pours down you when you know you're supposed to do something to put others first and you don't do it. Your anxiety gets worse. Your OCD gets worse. Your terrible self-esteem and self-loathing increases. You end up in the pit. None of us know what other people are going through or how much pain they're in or what they've overcome. And it's been an experience, eye-opening experience. The people who I've looked at and modeled as some of the most beautiful, outgoing, loving people, after I got to know them, really know them, I discovered many, many times they weren't like that from the start. They weren't just natural extroverts, easy with people. They were struggling every time they stepped out and were friendly to people and affirming to people. Many of them came from families that did not give affirmations, and it felt awkward in their mouths. They felt like they were pretenders. It was hard for them. And I couldn't believe it. It's like, you're so good at it. You're my model to try to be more like you. And they were like, thanks for that encouragement because I still struggle with it. It's amazing. When we stop caring about what other people think about us and start caring about those other people, thinking, I wonder what they would want right now. And then grabbing the initiative and giving it to them. As best as we can guess what? Our own anxiety and OCD starts to fade away. Statistically proven, like magic. The more we think about ourselves, the more we obsess about our feelings, how we look to others, our insecurities, our weaknesses, the more we're brought down to the realm of the dead, the depths of the pit. The less we think about ourselves, the less we follow the way of Satan, the more we follow the way of Jesus and grab the initiative that Jesus told us to do, and be constantly thinking, if I were that person, what would be the most wonderful thing I would want? And then we just do that for them. Garber, in his article, Addressing the Need for Certainty in OCD, writes about the amazing recent discovery in psychology. He writes, what seems to help patients most is stepping away from themselves, at least momentarily, and working to better understand how their actions influence others. That's the Jesus way. Gerber is telling us that therapists are finally discovering if they can get patients who have OCD to actually be aware of how much misery their behaviors are causing to family and friends. This even works with people with Tourette's. If they start thinking about others and stop obsessing about themselves, they start getting better. That's the amazing cure that they're finally figuring out. That all those years, all those decades, therapists said, what we need to do is listen to them more, obsess about their pain, try to help them remember their childhood pain, dredge up new childhood pains and give them false memories. That's been proven. If you start thinking, oh, you probably were abused by your parents, guess what? You start remembering that you were abused by your parents. But instead of thinking about themselves, they said, stop thinking about themselves. They're finally figuring out something that sounds remarkably identical to Jesus' golden rule. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. I can't be obsessing about germs. Let's say I have an OCD germ thing, or dealing with my eye ticks, or avoiding stepping on a crack, or whatever it is, if I see a child about ready to run in the street. Anybody who's got the most debilitating OCD forgets about that and runs and goes saves that child. They step on a million cracks. They step in a dog do, whatever it takes to save that child's life. But that's because they see an immediate danger that's pulling them out of themselves, stops them thinking about themselves. If they did that all the time, constantly looking around, we meet people all the time, grocery stores and neighbors. What would they want for me? What would I want if I were them? Excuse me. Take the initiative. Bake that cake or cookies. Go over there and tell those parents how beautiful their kids are. I liked it. I still remember sweet older people who told me how beautiful my kids were when Ian was 3. I still remember those times. What a blessing they gave to me. Doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that every parent would like to hear how beautiful and special their kids are. If I'm alone and I think about my family members who are teenagers, we all got them. We got family members, nieces, nephews, you name it. And remember how awkward and foolish I felt at their ages, and ask myself, what would I want if I were them? And call them up. If they live local, inviting them out for coffee. If not, FaceTime them. And listen with all my heart to them. Encourage them, maybe even if they ask for it, about once every 999.99999 times they ask me for advice, maybe giving them some advice, knowing there's about a 9,999,000 chance that they're not going to listen to it anyways. So I don't know why we ever bother giving advice to young people. They got to learn the hard way. But instead of being in relationship with them to give them advice, instead was in a relationship to listen to them. What did we want? We want most. We were all feeling ugly and stupid before we got our first boyfriend, or we had our first success in sports or whatever it is. We wanted somebody to listen to us, to think we were special. And we gave that to them. Guess what? While I'm doing that, my OCD is going to start fading. If I'm grabbing the initiative and giving to others, my family members or whoever, like Jesus tells us, is the summation of the entire law of God. The Jesus way is for our own good as well as for everyone else's. It pulls us out of the pit. Let's look at one more. Addiction. Everybody today deals with some form of potential addiction. Probably many forms of it. There's none righteous, no, not one, Romans tells us, Romans 3:10. I was surprised to see a rehab center. They're all beginning to change now. Sunshine Behavioral Health Rehab Center talks about addicts. I was flummoxed because it didn't talk about things like this even 10, 20 years ago. Having, and I quote, self-serving, self-absorption, egocentric, and selfish, a pervasive focus upon self and one's own needs, wishes, and desires. This intense focus leaves others in the addict's life without much consideration except with regard to how they can meet the needs, wishes, and desires of their self-centered selves. That's on their website. Wow. Addicts, they write, use and abuse the people who love them because they overly care about themselves. In fact, it's the foundation, it writes, it's the foundation of their relationship with others. can you do for me? They go on to say a healthy relationship is characterized by two people who each want to serve, care for, love, support, listen to, compassion, give compassion, understanding to one another, which is the Jesus way. If I'm addicted to, say, negative gossip, I indulge my addiction by hurting the reputations of others behind their back and pouring harmful, toxic negativity into the ears of my listeners, dragging them down to a pit of hell by training them to get their consciences seared by talking about other people. And it drags me down to a pit of hell too. If I'm addicted to alcohol, I don't care about the people who could benefit and depend upon my emotional support, my financial stability, my time, my energy. Every addiction comes down to the way of Satan, which is the way of self-centeredness, as opposed to the way of Jesus, which is the way of selflessness, asking ourselves what we'd like other people to do for us, then grabbing the initiative and doing it for them. Yeah. I'm going to briefly look at 2 of the 7 deadly sins. The reason I chose these, pride, avarice, greed, all of those. Churches talk about most of them, but there's a few they just don't talk about nowadays. And here's one: lust. Lust is simply the sexual desire gone too far. We all have passions, and those are God-given. We shouldn't feel ashamed for our sexual desire. We should never look down on a desire, even a powerful one like sex, any more than looking down a desire for food or to succeed at something. The desire for food keeps us alive. The desire to succeed, to persevere, to conquer, keeps us motivated, gives life purpose. The desire for sex keeps our family, tribe, nation, and ultimately our species alive. It's an essential desire, an essential desire. Lust is simply the sexual desire that's gone too far, that's far enough that it stops thinking about other people. Wow, that's a pretty girl, waka waka. That's not lust. That's just a natural passion for sexual expression that God puts in us to encourage us to pass on our genes. It's healthy and absolutely necessary for our species. Lust, though, says, I want to have sex without thinking long and hard about the other person's needs, the other person's dreams, their hopes, without thinking about both families involved, or about the possibility of having children and what's best for children, for the children that we could have. Nowadays, you never hear lust not being wrong anymore. In fact, we've renamed it. We've renamed lust and given it positive connotations like a form of self-care, healthy sexual expression. But people who indulge in actual lust, in other words, who follow their passions without thinking long and hard about others, the other person, the family, the potential children, they end up cheating on their spouses, have a long chain of broken hearts, venereal diseases, and on, and end up every time in a pit of hell. The other deadly sin we're going to look at is sloth. Sloth, laziness, is the opposite of the biblical values of diligence, perseverance, servanthood. The Bible teaches us, it's one of the first commands God gives, that work is not something we do simply for food and shelter. It's a sacred privilege given to us by God from the beginning. We are to work diligently to make a difference in this world. We are supposed to care for our world. Whether we have a fancy job or not, we are to work with a cheerful, grateful heart and diligently. And a big reason to do so is to help support others in need. Sure, the most important people we need to help, if we have children, are our children. But we are to work more than just to support our families and harder than our bosses demand. We are to be diligent, to create, to produce, to grow, and to make things that help other vulnerable and needy people. We are to be generous with our money, our time, our energy. And how can we have excess money to be generous with if we don't make more money than we need? Some people are really good at making money. Others are really good at creating, inventing, supporting, listening. Whatever it is God's gifted us with, and we all have completely different gifts, and it's amazing. It's wonderful. That's what we need to be donating to others. If you don't have money and you have a great listening ear, or you have patience to be able to hang out with young people, children, senior citizens, whatever you have, we are supposed to be donating that because that's the Jesus way. The people who made the biggest difference in my life were not rich folks. None of them. They just happened to be, they could have been, but they happened to be kind-hearted people who donated lots and lots of time to a lonely, young, disheartened young man who needed encouragement, needed to learn new skills, needed a ride, needed spiritual direction, and they gave their time, their wisdom, and blessed me for all eternity. They grabbed the initiative and did for me what they would have wanted, whether they got it or not, when they were young people. Add up God's law and prophets, this is what you get. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you. What would be the most awesome thing to happen for me right now? And just grab the initiative and do it for them. It's not only the key to blessing the lives of everyone around us, but it's also the key to pulling us out of whatever pit we're in, and the key to lifting us to the realm of God, the Jesus way.
Thanks again for tuning in. I'd really appreciate it if you clicked like and subscribed and check out some of the other videos on this channel. Please share them with your friends and social media groups. Have a great week. See you next time.